My name is Nnedi Okorafor. I'm a professor at the University of Buffalo, New York, and I'm also a writer. And the reason why I chose to write fantasy slash magical realism is really it started with the very first story that I wrote. It's just the way that I see the world. I see the world as a magical place. So when I sat down to write stories, and the first story that I wrote was realistic. It was realism. It was a true story that happened to myself and my sisters. And when I wrote that story, the magical things just kind of came out. You know, they came out in the story that I was writing. So it's really more about the way that I see the world. And then at some point, the more that I wrote, the more that I felt confident about portraying those magical things that I would see or that I would imagine and putting that in my work. So at that point, I jumped the rails from magical realism to flat out fantasy, where things are just really, the magical aspects are much stronger. When I sit down to write something, a lot of times I don't even know what I'm going to write. I'll just sit down. I'm a very unconscious writer. I don't need to have a full fleshed out outline. I don't need to know exactly where I'm going. I can just sit down. I'll just have an emotion and I'll sit down, or a character, and I'll sit down and just start writing. And in the process of writing that, because I'm a thinker and I'm a very political person, and I have very, very strong opinions and ideas, those naturally come out. So when I finish writing something, when I look back, it may seem like I had a strong message to portray, but it wasn't necessary that I sat down to write that message. It just comes forth naturally, organically. I think that Africa is getting, from literature, literature is holding up a mirror to Africans as a whole. And we know, like, I'm speaking about Africa as a continent. It's a big, huge, diverse place with thousands and thousands of cultures and languages and ideas. So that said, I think that literature provides Africa with a mirror to inspect itself. Also, certain types of literature, especially science fiction, for example, and a lot of the fantastical literatures kind of push African readers to imagine and think beyond what's there, and in doing so, giving African readers, equipping them with the tools necessary to solve problems, to come up with new things and improve life, all sorts of things. So I think that African literature is a big imaginative tool, and imagination is very necessary for any peoples. What made me create Lagoon? What made me write this novel that is set in Nigeria, present-day Nigeria, in particular 2009, where aliens come to Lagos? What made me write that? Well, the catalyst for this story was, there was a movie called District 9. And District 9 was the first big budget science fiction film that was set in Africa. It was set in Johannesburg. And this particular film portrayed Nigerians horribly. It portrayed Nigerians as cannibals, criminals, prostitutes. The main bad guy was named after a Nigerian president. It was just very clearly a film for no reason that was going after Nigerians. And I remember seeing this film and being really just extremely irate when I saw this film, because I went to see it the day it came out. I was very excited, and then I saw this portrayal of Nigerians, and there was no reason for it. It wasn't really part of the plot. It was not necessary. It just showed the discrimination that is often meted out against Nigerians in South Africa. And so at one point I was discussing District 9 with a Nollywood film director, Chidi Chikere, and we were talking, and he said, and we started just speculating, what would happen if aliens came to Nigeria? What would happen? And then the first thing we landed on was that they would go to Lagos. Of all parts of the world, they'd go to Lagos. So that, and then Chidi said, or we started thinking, what would Nigerians want with the aliens? What would the first thing they'd want, and especially Lagosians? And he said, the aliens would want, or the Lagosians would want to get the aliens to start printing naira and euros, and so once he put it like that, my wheels really started turning. I'm like, oh, I got to see where this goes, and that's where Lagoon started. And so when I wrote Lagoon, all of these issues that, all these very, very Nigerian issues just kind of whipped into the story. So it's dealing with bad roads, it's dealing with corruption, it's dealing with 419, it's dealing with Christian fanaticism, it's dealing with all of these issues while aliens are invading the country. So in particular Lagos, and they come from the water. So that was really the genesis of that. It was a lot of things. It was, I like to listen as well. So there are certain stories that come out of Nigeria that always stick with me, and those kind of found their way right into this alien invasion story. So it's like, it's fiction, it's a first contact narrative, but it also has a lot of realism in there too, that Nigerians in particular will recognize.